5:30. I'll call the meeting to order. Got an agenda circulated. Would somebody like, oh, actually, sorry. I'd like to start by recognizing that this meeting is respectfully held on the traditional territory of the Sycus First Nation, on whose land we live, work, and play. We have an agenda circulated. Would somebody like to move adoption? Move. Seconder? Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. We have the minutes from the October 15th and October 21st special meeting. Would somebody like to move adoption? Seconder? Anything coming out of those minutes? All in favor? Carried. No bylaws, so we'll move on to delegations. 5.1. Harry and Scott, I'll hand it over to you.
You won't be on camera. Could you, sorry, you have to move.
You have to be on camera.
Sorry.
Good evening.
Just 2 seconds. We just, sorry, the iPad went to sleep. There we go.
Sure, you bet. I'll start with introduction. Scott Belwer with Stantec Consulting, a civil engineering firm based out of Prince George. On behalf of our client, Harry Hook with Cannon Tree Farms. Harry's here as well, but I'll start with some of the sort of more engineering discussion. I believe Mayor and Council have already been presented with a copy of the application. There is a risk of me talking too much at any time in the interest of time. If someone says, hey, get on with this, don't think you're going to offend me by saying anything like that. But staff asked us to present to Mayor and Council to present our application, partly, I guess, to facilitate awareness and question and answer and dialogue. And so when I say there's a risk of me talking too much, because it may be that the question and answer is where the value comes from. So I'll try to get our end goal, I guess, from my perspective on behalf of Harry is to help get the dialogue to say before we go from this stage to more detailed designs and construction, to get feedback from the community, mayor and council staff, to say, hey, this is our vision. Here's how we envision applying the municipalities' bylaws and the provincial regulations to it. But if there's something, whether it be an end goal or vision, or something of a dialogue to say, look, there's 6 ways of doing something some days, we'd rather have that feedback early in the process rather than get to the point where we've invested time and Harry's money in engineering designs and then redo things. And honestly, that's a super risk for any engineering project, the idea of getting some of that dialogue early so we get on the same page before we start for design or construction. And I do think being new to this file where there is several years of history with this file, my own perspective is I look back and there are some things that have been attempted that just didn't fit. And so we've sort of taken a step back to say, hey, the idea of density, we're trying to do more lots, the idea of affordability and what can you achieve with a specific piece of property. Sometimes there's nice to haves. They just don't apply for the situation. I think maybe this property's had some of that in the past. The idea of trying to apply an urban, where, in a larger community, the distance where your transition from urban downtown to rural might cover 50 kilometers. Well, that transition happens in half a kilometer here. So just because the transition from downtown to rural happens in a shorter distance doesn't mean that the site is really suitable for the services. So we've really just taken a step back to say the zoning, the official community plan, they all designate rural, and that's what we've looked to achieve. And certainly, as much as the rules have changed administratively for how we demonstrate water and sewer, with Northern Health somewhat taking a step back, the engineering or the science behind it hasn't changed whatsoever. So the engineering work we do to demonstrate and be comfortable that there will be water and what's needed for sewer, we may not have the privatization of some of the processes like Northern Health involvement doesn't change what we do for the engineering. And certainly we're quite comfortable with, we've provided, helped communities with potable water, rural water, sewage lagoons for 20 years. So that really doesn't concern us here at all. Here, it was an idea of what kind of layout fits topography to make a road network work. And the idea of taking a look at the intersection. And I apologize, as much as I drive, from Prince George, I don't know the neighborhoods. Is it Brewster? Am I right? Yeah. The idea of saying, hold on, access to Brewster may not be a good idea. So we've taken a step back to say, on a planned piece of paper, Brewster might look like a logical place for access. But once we stand there, say, hold on, that's not where we want access. So from taking a look at this, it was really the topography of providing a lot layout that said, what can we fit where you've got a drainage ravine through the center of it, and what points of access. So really, it took a couple of afternoons of walking the property and looking at air photos to just reconfigure it. And because of the topography, that's where we've got lot sizes that are, anywhere from 5 acres to 11 acres with an average of 6 or 7, even though the zoning bylaw might say 4. Again, that's great if it's flat property. We don't think that's necessarily the type of density that's going to fit here. But aside from that, it's and a bit of a conversation around sorting the difference between bylaws that are written with a vision towards urban, and this is the question of fire protection and cul-de-sac lengths, and just took a step back to say, hold on, those short cul-de-sac lengths, what do they really fit, and what were they written towards? And saying, hold on, that's written towards the idea of urban development may not fit this case. But we also wanted to have a technical basis for that, which took us a little bit to find. Since then, we've actually had other files through the city of Prince George and other municipalities that have actually come to the same approach. So it's not like we, sometimes there's a risk as engineers that we're twisting it to find a solution to fit what we want to do rather than having the technical basis. In this case, we've got both. So I think I will stop right there because unfortunately I get a little too keen on the work, and I'll stop right there. I don't know if Harry wants to add anything or just open the floor to any questions you might have. I would say in closing, before we go to a question and answer, one of the biggest things we look for, particularly this time of year, is if there's a desire to break ground the next year, we have engineering designs and surveys and field information we need to get before there's too much snow on the ground. And so when I've referred to preliminary layout review, it's meant to be a form of approval. It just gives us some basic, not final approvals, but some degree of communication of approval, particularly for a file like this, where it's gone through 2 or 3 iterations over previous years. That just says, hey, are we all on the same page? And so hopefully after this and letting mayor and council go back to staff, our goal would be to get some degree of communication of a basics of approval. Not to say we're done, but to say after we go to detailed designs and construction, that we've got a basis.
Well, that sounds good. And yes, this is definitely a different plan than we've seen the other times, but definitely looks a lot more feasible. I'll open the floor up to questions. Councillor Frankel.
Yeah, I appreciate getting this in advance, but it is, I know you've been tweaking it, Harry, for a while. We've seen it from the old subdivision where on a map we saw 150 or 200, not yours. And then we've seen the western side, which we were all excited about. Now we're seeing the eastern side. So when do you move forward through the application process? Because it's being tweaked, right? You've tweaked it 3 times. When do you make application, or is this because you're going through the application process that you've tweaked it?
Well, recall that the reason that we tweaked it the first time was at planner's request, because we initially came forward with a proposal not too dissimilar from this. It was big acreages.
Yeah.
And the planner said, oh no, well, we want affordable housing. And we do want some executive, type, uh, layout, but we want affordable housing too, so we'd like you to mix it up and give us some of everything. So that's why we came up with the 200 lot subdivision, which, to be honest with you, I hated it. I didn't think it was what was needed. I didn't think it would be financially viable, but you try and accommodate people's wishes. And then, yeah, nothing happened. Well, COVID and all that neat stuff, like, you know, the nonsense around. So nothing much happened anywhere. And so we tried to get it back on track with things, but it just wasn't working. So, Scott and I got together, and I'm really happy. I'm really happy with this layout, the plan, the presentation. If you recall, the other issue that we have is not having access off Chaco Avenue,
Mhm.
which was also with the original plan. Council
Yeah.
wanted access off of Chaco Avenue as the emergency.
As an alternate,
Right.
yeah.
And so we kind of got stuck on that. To be honest with you, that's my fault, just not understanding how these things work. We abandoned it because I had the misunderstanding that that we'd be going through district property. As it turns out, it's Crown, and that's a whole new process. And yeah, so we dropped that one like a hot potato. And I really like this. It doesn't mean that we won't ever develop the western
Yeah.
side of the property, because that's my favorite side of it, to be honest.
Yeah.
It has the character, but right now I'd say it's further than. And
Maybe I'll add to that answer real quick, though. That's one of the advantages of being there, is to help clarify exactly that question, because it's had multiple years. There's this question of process. And granted, I haven't been involved in the previous years, so there was a process, part of it was saying, hey, hold on, someone clear, in order that I can be effective between Harry and the municipality, someone give me the full file so I can read it and clarify. And so that's why my application referred to preliminary layout review, because it is a partial part that says, look, after 12 months to 24 months, applications stale date and die for exactly that concern. So we consider this in itself to be a new application. Doesn't mean there hasn't been a history, but in order to say there's clarity, we have submitted this as a subdivision application.
Any other questions?
I'm not sure that I answered your question though, did I?
It's okay, Harry. I'm not a developer. I'd love to see a development come into our community. You and I and others have toured with you on that. Obviously, I have a feeling towards the western side because
Yeah.
it's a pretty nice piece of land back there. So
Yeah.
the only other question I had, Harry, was since we denuded everything on there, the riparian area going through that side, it was a concern at the time. Is that it goes through to 4th Street, if I'm not mistaken, William? You might be new to this file, but it goes down through there. So is there any chance that we can do something there to help, not a flood situation?
Well, that's a very good question. None of us want that kind of.
Yeah, okay.
Of an occurrence for sure. There's no indication on site that we've had catastrophic flooding.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that it's never happened, for sure.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm not, and I can't say by the changes that we've made, which is basically removing the forest cover. I don't think that we've compromised the integrity of the terrain. We left the stumps in place and whatever to hold water, so it's not. I don't think we're going to have siltation. We haven't had so far, so see why
There was, just to throw in then, and I'll go to you, Councillor Van Dola. There was, I believe, a large amount of water went through there 8, 9, 10 years ago. There was a January thaw event that saw that area take a lot of water. So just as a heads up that it can.
Not because of your area, it was way to the south and to the west. On a farmer's field that it backed up, and then when that blew out, then it continued down. So nothing to do with your property, just,
Okay.
that's all I'm thinking about
But it
saying.
might cause you a headache.
It might cause you a
Yeah.
headache.
But having said that, District is like, we want this to be a success. I'm not in a
Mhm.
hurry to make it happen, but we want it to be a total success from everybody's perspective. So if it takes time to do that, Scott and I will be on the ground periodically, and if it's something that we sense that needs to be done, it's gonna be done, for sure.
I suppose I can speak to that from an engineering perspective in the sense of all the information we submitted as the application. And one of the reasons we try to seek preliminary layout approval is that so that when we do get into areas that require more design, and in this case, it'll be the road layout and ditching and drainage, that we're doing on the basis of a preliminary layout that has buy-in, so that we don't try to reduce the repetitiveness of the work. So of the application that we've made, I would say that there's greater certainty around the water and sewer. That's the easiest work that I believe we've comfortable that is proved for subdivision purposes. Where we have more work to do, and I don't think that it's a huge effort or risk or concern around feasibility, particularly being rural development. The impact of rural will be less than if it was right downtown. But we have more work to do on the design of the drainage and the roads beyond what you've seen. So there will be another submission to staff with much more detail on it.
Councillor Van Dola.
Thanks. I just was looking at the kind of the far south boundary there. You've got a kind of a dedicated area for a future road allowance. Just wondering, it looks like there's the drainages to the far east and just off the one kind of cul-de-sac there in the middle. If the plan was actually to come where you're proposing now, come down to that cul-de-sac and then get access to the far west that way instead of potentially having to cross two more drainage locations.
You're talking about the road allowance?
The
at
yellow
far-
line on the bottom.
yellow line.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be super blunt. The yellow line and the allowances there really haven't been put there because it's desirable for the development.
Right.
It's been put partly because it's on the official community plan as a connection from one highway to another.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And as a way of identifying the way subdivisions have been laid out in the last 75 to 100 years, where you've got district lots and you've got a half road allowance on one side and a half road allowance on the other side. What it creates in this scenario is a half road allowance that's way beyond our control from a perspective of being on a separate individual's property to the south. It's something that's we're allowing for it to make sure that what we do doesn't negatively affect the ability for it to happen in the future.
Right.
Whether that's 2 years from now or 75 years from now, we're providing for the ability to make that connection. We don't think it's for the 10 to 14 lots that we've got. I think the road
makes no
connection.
sense.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, part of the deal under the Land Act is you have to, on all Crown Land portions, you have to be able to have provide for access for Crown lands beyond, right? So that'd be why that easement is there most likely. And then the other question I had was a number of iterations before we talked about possibly having an access road kind of directly across the street from the dump road, or potentially that would give us an ability to maybe put a signal light there to slow the traffic down coming up Prince George Hill. And we talked about that the last time you were here, Harry, and just and you thought it was a interesting concept, but of course I just wasn't sure if that was something you even considered.
You know what, Dave? I don't recall that. My
Okay.
apologies. My recollection was that we provide emergency access to Brewster. In the unlikely event that Speedway was blocked off
Right.
and there's, something bad happened. And then, we talked about that at length, at nauseam. Scott and I, and basically if we provide an access, which we still can do, if that's, the input from the fire marshal and one thing. But then you open that up to it becoming a common access,
Mm.
which goes against the idea of the safety of coming out onto Highway 60 and on Brewster is just, it's a no-go. I think
Mhm.
by
Yeah.
everybody's.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Yeah, so not sure how you do that. I'm sorry, I don't recall any discussion about a stoplight or coming out.
Directly across
Yeah.
from Dump Road, which
But
would
having-
be south of,
Yeah, but having
Brewster.
said that, if you notice on this drawing, we do have the
Yeah.
secondary access.
Yeah.
Which is,
Pretty close.
yeah,
Yeah.
proximity.
Yeah,
Anyways,
yeah.
yeah, so.
You never know, Harry, it may come back from highways. It might come back from highways that may be the option, but you're pretty close to trying to get there in the fact that, you've got this secondary access. There's Dump Road, it's a purchase of a piece of property or however it works. Then you've got this light, because I don't know what these folks are all doing here. There's congestion everywhere up there with a lot of things, so who knows, maybe this is a better option right here.
Yeah.
But that's up to highways and
Yeah.
you gotta talk to them and see, or maybe our staff can help, maybe
Well,
talk to.
I think it's it's a joint effort. It's,
Mhm.
We're looking for recommendations and input from you that we can carry forward in
Yeah.
a positive way. Without that, we're just spinning our wheels.
Yeah.
For sure.
You bet. Any other questions from the room? Councillor Lozay, I can no longer see you, so I'll just check and make sure you didn't have a question.
No, I'm good, thank you.
Good. Well, thanks again, guys, for
Yeah.
coming and presenting this. We're super excited to see something go forward here. So as I say, I think to me, this looks the most, real doable
Right on.
plan. So really hoping that we can see that move forward.
Sure, and I thank you for that, and I thank you for your time, but I will speak to the word you just said, the word doable. Because at the end of the day, sometimes, even when I'm talking with Harry, I'll push back a little bit and poke and prod and say, like, hold on, if we want to do this, there's the idea of throw away my calculator, throw away 75% of our engineering to say, how do I keep it simple enough that it's doable? If I go through too many iterations, particularly something that's really, we're talking, I don't know if it's 11 or 12 lots, but it's not a big development. And if I get it too encumbered with too many complications of process, particularly we add our seasonal issues of a short construction season, we could be here 5 years from now and not have not have got somewhere. And so and again, I'm starting to talk too much, which I do by nature, but in that process of seeking preliminary approval, I do believe staff will have an obligation to refer to highways because of the proximity to highways. So we would get some of that dialogue that would come back from them. But in this particular case, given the low density and the low number of vehicles, and specifically trying to avoid Brewster, but I don't think the process of having dialogue with highways will be too much of a consideration. My caution with the dump road is introducing more landowners, more stakeholders and highways and what ifs and future planning. And I just don't, I have some concerns about it taking us too far down a tangent where something just doesn't happen for another. Along that lines of doable, try to keep it simple.
Yeah, that sounds good. Great. Well, thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
6.1, airport terminal design. Did someone from staff want to speak to it? Okay. Should be on. No, do you have a batteries in? Well. Why don't you take Rod's and I'll turn that on?
So this is coming before council as the initial design for the terminal building. The reason it's coming forward is TC Energy, Coastal GasLink gave us a grant 3 years ago, and they've asked us to spend the money, start to do the design. So this design is the first rendition that has come from Sahari. And it's up for discussion as to what council wants to do next for either consultation or what they think of the design, also for a location. The Sahari has noted a few different locations that they like for the terminal. One of them may require some property acquisition if the owner were willing to sell, which they may not. We have lots of land out there as well. So a final location has to be determined.
Thanks. I'll open up to questions. Councilor Franco?
Yeah, I appreciate that we had that in our budget this year, and I appreciate, Margaret, that, you know, it's a conceptual drawing and it's class 3 and it's schematics and it's a whole pile of things. What I would like to do tonight is defer this so that Councillor Vandola and I are the airport liaisons, that we can take this to all of the user groups and then get some feedback from the user groups. So I appreciate that everything's conceptual. At least we've got something on paper that we can go back and tear apart or enhance or tweak or whatever it is, and then go from there. So if that works with Councillor Vandola, I would move to defer until we get to meet with the user groups.
Yeah, no, looking through everything, it's, when I first got the report, glad that we went and spent the money and did all this work, but I was really disappointed that Councillor Frankel and I were not included in the, with the engineering firm or architectural firm that produced this. They met with staff, which was awesome, but they met with members of BC Wildfire Service, which I'm not really sure why they were included in Mr. Councillor Franklin and I, and the other stakeholders out there at the airport were not included. So we obviously would have probably had a different outlook on what we would like to see out there. I mean, on paper, the terminal conceptual design looks really great, but there's a couple of things in there. I'm like, well, why are we adding this and why are we adding that? And I'm sure that the user groups would have a similar type of questions. So as indicated by Councillor Frankel, I would prefer that we defer this and so we have a chance to get together with the stakeholders out there to get their input on what's been done to date. Yes.
Yes. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Okay, 6.2, Business Facade Improvement Program 2025. Need a third hand here. Okay, we have a recommendation there. Does somebody want to move it?
Yeah.
Second. Okay, any discussion?
Awesome.
Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Chamber of Commerce Parade of Lights, we have a recommendation there. Okay. Any discussion? Carried. 6.4, we have the meeting agenda. Now, we don't have to adopt this tonight, right? If we don't want to, but it's getting it out there and getting it into people's calendars.
Be posted. So it's like legislation, but have to adopt it. Still lots of time.
I'm remiss. We always have a squeaker around spring break. I meant to go and check the dates and didn't, so I can't remember where it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it is in Victoria this year. No, in Victoria, they always go. Or two.
Yeah, as long as it fits in there.
Got that nice weather there, right?
Well,
March 16th to 27th. 2025.
So there was one in the middle of there. I mean, I'm pretty ambivalent on it, but just I know we often end up canceling a meeting in there, right? For lack of quorum. Yeah. Whether we should move that to the 31st and,
I like that.
right? So we still have 2 meetings that
Yeah.
month, but
Yeah, I like that.
24th.
yeah. It doesn't matter where your 2 weeks are, right? It's, yeah. Anything else? If not, I would entertain a motion to adopt it if we're all good. Yeah. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay, 7 councillor items. We'll start with Councillor Frankel.
Yeah, I mean, you please talk to all of the forestry meetings that we've attended, you and Councillor Vandola and myself. But I'll leave those to you. Want to let everyone know that there's, the Heritage Conservation Act is something that's pretty prominent. We should probably keep that close to what's going on. That part of the Ministry of Forests actually is looking to make some legislative changes, and over the next year they will have a couple rounds of local government engagement. I.e., if we get any infrastructure projects, water, sewer, might need to have it run through an archaeological model. So we'll want to keep on top of that and what that would mean to us in costing. And so when that happens, we should, if you ever see anything on the Heritage Conservation Act or the HCA, PT or TP, Transformation Project, you'll want to be a part of it. So just want to let you know that we did that. We had our Environment Committee on the October 23rd, reviewed the terms of references, made some changes. And we're going to resend, we're still working on the finalization of the scoping document that we'll send to the mayor and the CAO Holland and get some feedback there and start moving that project forward. I do want to say, other than all of the fiber meetings, there is a small group of us that started a local leaders for mental health group. And it was the same thing we did at UBCM. We had 140 people show up. I organized the first meeting on October 25th. And we had 21 people from across the province call in. And so we're going to keep that committee moving. Not much to say or do. We haven't come up with any decisions. It's just that let you know that we're working on local leaders and that ability to find help for mental health. That's it for me.
Thank you. Councillor Laze.
I think I found my mic this time. Okay, October the 15th, there was a library board meeting. And they're currently working on their budget, and they've just completed the draft of their 2024-27 strat plan. They're seeking to be responsive to the community by considering how the library can be supportive as our demographics are changing. They also want to know how, look at ways that they can help meet some of the challenges that communities are currently experiencing from mental health and addictions, increased poverty, unemployment, and natural disasters such as wildfires and flooding. They also asked me to pass along a big thank you to council for the fence along the railroad tracks. They mentioned it. It's not part of their purview, but they were very appreciative that that fence is going up. So I also met a few times with Stacy Lee, who is with the Homeless Outreach and Prevention. She does that for Connexus, and she had contacted me in late September, asking that, what is, just wanting to have a conversation about homelessness in the community. She said there's 2 female and 2 males who are currently needing winter shelter. So we had a few conversations, and then I passed along that this interagency committee is getting going, and that would be under their mandate. So she was very excited about that as well. So that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vandola.
Yeah, everybody, on October 22nd, we had a face-to-face Community Disability Committee meeting with Mount Milligan. Actually met out on site. It was the first time I've ever been out at the Mount Milligan site. Pretty impressed with the facilities they have out there. We met in the building they call the Lodge, which is where all the people are housed out there, and essentially it's like a huge hotel, and everybody's got their own individual rooms, and we got a little look-see there, a big rec area. They got a full basketball gymnasium with pickleball courts. They got numerous pool tables. They got the golf kind of set up where you can play a round of golf virtually. So for the mining staff out there, it's second to none really. And I'm hoping that we'll see something of similar kind of opportunity out at Artemis Gold when they get going. They identified that they'd only had one lost time incident out there. It was nothing, no injury or anything. It was just a sickness there. They did say the amount of product that they put through. They mine about 11.8 million tons of material, which is about 1% below what they've done in the last year. And out of that 11.8 million tons, they process about 5.6 million tons in order to get 43,000 ounces of gold. So it's a lot of material, getting refined out at the site. And then that product, which they gave us a little bag, like a lunch bag, and it's kind of a black kind of a material, and they separate copper and the gold out of that, but they ship it away to India and Korea to do the refining. So it's not even refined in North America. It's out there. They are looking to expand their mining lease to allow for the area to expand, to get going. That just because of the quality of the material they've been getting, they're looking to, right now the mine life goes to 2029, and they're looking to expand and increase the mining lease area so they can expand the mine to 2035. And so that was good news. Interesting thing they talked about was the amount of procurement contracts that they have within the region. They have 406 suppliers in the region, and they're doing about $899 million worth of service suppliers there. So I thought that was pretty outstanding. They've got quite a number of monitoring programs. They've had a number of, in some of the permitting side, especially on the riparian and some of the other works. They've actually had a couple of non-compliances with their mine certificate. And of course, now they've had a number of those nonconformances have gone to opportunity to be heard for them, which was kind of new to them. They hadn't really seen that. And one of the reasons that they're saying that this is occurring is because a lot of the inspectors that are coming out are brand new, where in the past, the inspectors that have been in there in the past were 35-year employees that understood the ramifications of a nonconformance, whether it would meant much or not, where they could just kind of get a letter and say, we need you to kind of work on this piece or that piece. Now you have a senior mine inspector is 24 years old. And so, and only been in the ministry for 1 or 2 years. So they're not, their risk tolerance isn't there. So now instead of just guiding, the company along and saying, I'd like to see this the next time I'm out there, just going hard at it to statutory decision makers to take those forward. So that's one of those things that they're dealing with, no different than any of the other agencies with the number of staff that are retiring. That we're seeing more and more junior people that are in senior positions go forward. On the HR side, they have 87% of the people working out there are men, 13% are women. The local side, just around 65% of the individual working out there are from the region area. So Mackenzie, Fort St. James, Vanderhoof, Prince George. And it goes out Fraser Lake, and in some cases they'll extend out to Smithers. So 65%, which I thought was good. Our last update we had from Artemis Gold, their local numbers were around 45%. So that was significant. And they've got around 16% First Nations and 13% female out there. So that's the breakdown. Well, anyway, yeah, just a pitch. We need to, if I was Fort St. James, I'd be connecting with the Ministry of Highways because the North Road was in absolute horrid shape. It took 2.5 hours from Fort St. James to drive to Mount Milligan. It was just really bad. So anyway, I was like, oh my goodness. Anyway, that interesting facility, and we were well looked after when we got there. That's it for me.
Councilor Bowler.
So Councillor Frankel already covered our environmental meeting. I also took in the Vanderhoof Chamber of Commerce meeting on the 17th of October. Chamber of Commerce doing wonderful things in our town right now, moving everything along really quickly. We've got 84 paid, and Shelley keeps working at getting more and more people on board, and there are more coming on board. More and more businesses are recognizing that the chamber is a valuable asset to them and our town. In the correspondence, we're going to be working with, it looks like BCIT, who did an app for the chamber. They're going to be redoing that, looking at that and getting a website redone by them. And the only reason it's going out is because this is offered to us gratis. So it'll be a good thing to have there. With the All Candidates Forum, which didn't turn out to be an All Candidates Forum, turned out to be a meet and greet for Murphy. About 30 people attended. Kim Rustad and Nate also did come and have a table there. What's that? Oh, yeah, Royal. Sorry, Kim Royal. My mistake. I apologize. Yeah, Kim and Nate were there with a table, and I guess some folks went and talked to them as well. We're getting ready for a whole season of things coming up that the chamber is involved in. We're going to start with the Movember coming up this Friday. I've thrown my hat into the ring, so I'll be looking like that for the next little while when we come to council meetings. They've got lots of sponsors. Oh, I'm going to be coming around for donations and all that for you guys. Don't worry about that. So we'll go for our clean pick here this coming Friday, and then we'll do the wrap up on the 29th of November. The business walk, as I mentioned earlier, turned out good and we've talked about that previously. Pardon me, so I won't get into that anymore. We've got our Christmas open house coming up on the 3rd of November. Parade of Lights and Merry Madness on the 7th of December, and we talked extensively about the parade route. I think in future years, we're gonna have to sit down quite a bit ahead of time, try and really organize a route where people can watch it, still adheres to our traffic policies and all of that as well. But with the amount of participation, which is a good thing, we want lots of participation, but it does kind of get into the way of like you get the parade that length, it's sometimes hard to maneuver it around, especially with some of the larger floats and that. And Small Business Week just happened this past week. I wasn't involved in all of that, so I don't know exactly went on there. And I believe that the Fraser Lake Chamber of Commerce is going to want to avail themselves of some of Shelley's abilities, and Shelley's going to be working with them at times. And that's my report this time around.
Councilor Martins.
Thanks. I don't have anything that lengthy, but that's good. I'm looking forward to the mustache thing here, Tom.
I want to see you shade yours up.
I really don't have anything very specific either. I was just going to mention a couple of things that you just kind of hear around town, and you kind of have people bounce off you all the time. And one of them, Councillor Lozay mentioned already, was the fence. Hear nothing but positive about that. So that's I think a very, very good thing. And when the next one goes up the airport there, that'll be is good too. And then it was just kind of ironic. The last meeting when I was talking just briefly about the highway safety after the, a couple of bad incidences we had, it brings those things to the forefront and our Highway 16 corridor through town and all that kind of stuff. And just ironically enough, they painted the fog lines just right after that on Highway 16, which is you might not notice I notice that because it's what I do, but things like that really improve safety on Highway 16. So I thought that was a great addition as well. Just kind of ironically happened right at that time. So good. Thanks. That's it.
Thank you. Yeah, so fiber and more fiber. And I want to just say again how grateful I am for Councillors Frankel and Van Dola. We've been meeting with a lot of people and having a lot of discussions, and it's great to have those assets on council and be able to lean on them. And I was lucky enough to go and have a quick chat with Chief Mueller on Friday, and hopefully we can get some discussions going between the three of us here and some members from there. I did meet with, we've been having the transition meetings. Out of that, there was some interesting stuff brought forward by Connexus and some of their challenges. So I did have a meeting with Paula Wiley just to go over some of those. And I think that's some of the things we can address going forward in the interagency meeting when we get it going. So we have that line of communications, but just making sure that we let organizations in our community know we're here to lobby for them. And when they hit a wall, lean on us and we can go and try and do what we can do to approaching some different places. I'm really looking forward to this election being over. I did 3 interviews on Wednesday. It's pretty amazing. So it looks like we should be in the final stretches here and hopefully we'll get out of that. And the good news there is look forward to the interregnum being over. We can have some good fruitful discussions with government. We can start moving things forward again. And that's going to be a big thing. And of course, planning to go down to Victoria when it makes sense, when we've got ministers, when we can make that happen. And that's it for me right now. But yeah, does anybody have any questions for anybody else out of the reports? Seeing none, we will move on to crime statistics. Does anybody have any comments? Oh, does it count? Okay, council priorities first. So as always, we have council priorities on the agenda to remind us of where we're trying to get to and what we want to keep in mind as we're making these decisions. 8.2, crime statistics. Any comments in there? Go ahead, Councillor Franco.
Yeah, just, I noticed that we're up 6%, year to date on calls for service. We should maybe talk to the staff sergeant of whether he feels that's another member or two, or whatever that would translate to. Because we've seen an upward trend. I thought when we started working with the minister far north on this, we were down in the 1,800 to 2,200 range of calls, and now we're up to 2,800, something like that. But we should be on top of asking him that question.
For sure, and I think we're overdue a chat anyway, so I think we should try and get him on an upcoming agenda, and we can have a check-in and see where we are and how we're doing. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to correspondence. 9.1, NCLGA Mental Health and Addictions Accord. Yes. Somebody want to make a motion around that?
Yeah, I think I'll move that we endorse or sign the accord. This is for mental health and addictions in general, which is a lot different than what I was talking about earlier, just for us.
Yeah.
So,
Do we have a seconder?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Just on that, before we move on, they do have the symposium coming up. I have not registered. I haven't looked if registration's open. We have a COM4 meeting on the 13th. I might see if I can get in on the 14th. Make that happen. Okay, we've got follow-up letters from Environment and Climate Change Strategy. First. So we don't have to receive these, and no. And afterwards, we have municipal affairs. Okay, I will move adjournment. Oh, I could declare us adjourned rather.